I'm working in a demo CPQ instance that has a client that's kind of an exemplar of the type of clientele that we would tend to see who might have a CPQ and NetSuite integration. So they're clients who, we're seeing the trend more and more that sell hardware and software and professional services, inclusive of things like warranties or maintenance contracts. So kind of that nice trifecta. When you have a client sort of with that type of business model, it makes a lot of sense that CPQ and an ERP like NetSuite would be in the fold. And for this client in particular, we've got in our demo instance, a product catalog full of equipment, services, and kind of installation and maintenance costs for these things. This is a green tech provider that has intelligent green tech that they're going to have to kind of install, set up, and run software for. So the login screen we have, just to orient those of you who might not have seen CPQ, it's really no different than Salesforce in that its primary orientation is making Sales Cloud the kind of the grand event, right? So for those of you who are just familiar with pipeline management, Salesforce Sales Cloud, the same concepts are going to still be really important, and the opportunity is still going to have a lot of centrality in the platform in that your pipeline, your revenue forecast is going to be comprised of opportunities. So we have a sample opportunity here. And what's a little bit different or unique, depending how you've seen Sales Cloud configured, is with CPQ, CPQ introduces its own custom quoting engine. So the model of how quotes and opportunities relate to each other, same as in normal Sales Cloud, is that for each opportunity, you can have multiple different quotes. You can have one, you can have two, you can have five, but you'll always only have one quote marked as the primary, such that it can sync back a dollar figure that you're actually including in your pipeline for revenue forecasting purposes. So if I were to quickly make a new quote, I'll kind of just launch it at the header level, usually trying to bypass too much information at this point. I'm kind of just trying to make a working draft for myself. But once I do create that quote, this is where I'm going to start kind of working the configuration from a CPQ standpoint. Right now, I don't have anything configured. It's just kind of an empty canvas for me. But once I hit the quote line editor, this is kind of the wizard that is the main event as far as CPQ is concerned. So the first thing I want to do is add some products to fill out my quote. I've got a feature called guided selling enabled in this instance. And what that does is it just provides a way that, if you're a company who's got thousands of different product SKUs, I can refine what I'm looking for, in this instance, software licenses that hit the enterprise segment, so that you can have different sort of suggested configurations or features that let you down select and hone in on what is most likely sort of applicable to that type of clientele. So for all things being equal, sort of helps narrow down what could otherwise be a super extensive catalog. Now I've got a software license that I'm going to need to activate across thousands of different units, in this case for wind turbines. So I'm just going to increase the quantity here to cover all of those units. All I've got really going on from a pricing calculator standpoint here is some volume discounts that I've enabled for this product SKU. So you'll see the list price of 120 per unit will go down pretty significantly once I hit a quantity floor like this. Just one of the many examples of ways that you can sort of program in some of those pricing and quantity-based automations into a CPQ quote. I'm going to set the start date for my prospective contract so that the license activation will span basically for the coming year should we win the business. And then once I've saved this, I'll see that some of those kind of core stats around list price, discount prices that we've kind of automated by virtue of those pricing discount schedules since I had such a massive quantity. Those are all going to kind of factor here. And the end result of what I've done to the opportunity is, since this was marked as my primary quote, this value is now going to sync back to my parent opportunity. So back here now I'll see that $157,000 prospective sale in my pipeline. Okay. Once we would be closing this out, if I were to close win, what that's going to do is basically Salesforce is now setting up to order and to contract this opportunity. What that means is the order is essentially the sales order. And this is by far the most common integration point when we're kind of talking about the handoff between a sales or CRM system and an ERP. Sales orders are essentially the sales receipts. And the contract that I've now generated is the module that's kind of tailored towards any kind of recurring revenue. So you'll see now in relation to this, I've got just that one order, but I've also got a contract which is made to accommodate multiple possible orders. So the meaning of that is if I were to increase the units and I wanted to co-term them, if I were to have a change order during the term of this contract, if I had additional sales, much like how folks might acquire new licenses during the term of their Sales Cloud, they want to acquire Pardot. Well, if I were to do that, I could have a new opportunity that gets compended to the same contract. So these are kind of the modules that have greatest significance when it talks about, when it comes to talking about a potentially Salesforce and ERP integration. I would sort of expect to find these represented in most systems, and one or the other is likely to be the integration point. So I'll go ahead and finally sync this over to NetSuite so I can create my sales order. And this is sort of the downstream one-way integration flow that rounds out our Salesforce setup.
And Brian, we got a question asking if this was all native Salesforce or native CPQ. Can you maybe add some color as to what would look different for a client that doesn't have Salesforce CPQ in this process?
Yeah, so what CPQ does is it gives you a point and click way to have things like I showed how when I did 1880 units, my price went down from 120 to 84. That's a rule that I've programmed into the back end. Now, visually, just in terms of navigating through Salesforce and Sales Cloud, it doesn't look different. It's much the same, and the consequence of my successful quoting is the same, meaning by virtue of a successful quote, really it's just tying back a correct dollar figure to Salesforce. Now, for orders and contracts, these are things you can manage with or without CPQ. So some of our clients will in fact have normal Sales Cloud without CPQ. We'll still use an order and a contract module basically to manage elements of recurring revenue, like for SaaS clients, anyone who has a subscription or a software license, and an order basically to create the sales receipt that we're going to pass down to an ERP. So these can be present regardless of if you have native Salesforce Sales Cloud or the more sophisticated CPQ licenses. Okay. So
another question super quickly, actually, Brian. Does Sales Cloud offer guided selling?
No. Guided selling is a feature of CPQ.
Thank you.